A judge has just ruled that attorney John Eastman, who is often credited as being the architect of the Capitol insurrection on January 6th, should be disbarred. According to NPR, Eastman, quote, played a key role in developing and backing a plan for states to send pro-Trump slates of electors to Congress and have then Vice President Mike Pence unilaterally block or delay the certification of Joe Biden's election victory.
Who hides evidence? Criminals hide evidence, not honest people. So, over the next 10 days, we get to see the machines that are crooked, the ballots that are fraudulent, and if we're wrong, we will be made fools of. But if we're right, a lot of them will go to jail.
Hello, America! Sorry, I had to say that. Look, we've got petitions pending before the Supreme Court that identify in chapter and verse the number of times state election officials ignored or violated the state law in order to put Vice President Biden over the finish line. We know there was fraud, traditional fraud that occurred. We know that dead people voted. But we now know, because we caught it live last time in real time, how the machines contributed to that fraud. And let me, as simply as I can, explain it. You know, the old way was to have a bunch of ballots sitting in a box under the floor, and when you needed more, you pulled them out in the dark of night. They put those ballots in a secret folder in the machines, sitting there waiting until they know how many they need. And then the machine, after the close of polls, we now know who's voted and we know who hasn't. And I can now, in that machine, match those unvoted ballots with an unvoted voter and put them together in the machine.
California State Bar Court Judge Yvette Rowland wrote in her decision, quote, Eastman's wrongdoing constitutes exceptionally serious ethical violations warranting severe professional discipline. Eastman made many patently false and misleading statements in court filings, in public remarks heard by countless Americans, and to others regarding the conduct of the 2020 presidential election and Vice President Pence's authority to refuse to count or delay counting properly certified slates of electoral votes on January 6, 2021. She went on to say, quote, his lack of insight into the wrongfulness of his misconduct is deeply troubling. While Eastman is entitled to defend himself, his conduct goes beyond this, revealing a complete failure to understand the wrongfulness of his actions. For those reasons and more, Judge Rowland has recommended that Eastman be disbarred. Her whole written opinion was 128 pages long. The California Supreme Court now has to review her recommendation, but in the meantime, Eastman's law license has been put in involuntarily inactive status. The trial lasted 34 days and heard testimony from over a dozen witnesses. During the trial, Eastman represented himself, arguing that he did not betray his oaths as the prosecution alleged, but rather he was just defending his client very, very zealously. He was just being a really, really good lawyer.
In the early decades of our nation's history, most state legislatures selected their state's presidential electors themselves. Only after 1824 did a majority of state legislatures move toward choosing their electors by popular vote. But your neighboring state legislature up in South Carolina continued to choose its state electors by itself all the way up until 1860.
He repeated election lies during the trial, but during cross-examination, he admitted that he had not independently verified the validity of the election lies that he was promoting. He was also met with several pieces of evidence directly contradicting or disproving his election lies. All of this led to the judge determining that Eastman deliberately ignored truths that he should have been aware of while promoting the fake electors plot. His lack of remorse and refusal to acknowledge malintent even now was a major factor in forming the judge's recommendation. In addition to recommending disbarment, it's also been recommended that Eastman pay a $10,000 fine. As if that's not enough, Eastman is also under criminal indictment in the RICO case in Georgia, also regarding election lies and efforts to overturn the 2020 election. So, at this point, let's recap. He's lost his job as a law professor at 2 different universities. He's about to be disbarred, so he won't be able to practice law anymore. He could face criminal charges in Georgia, and on the federal level, Special counsel Jack Smith has asked to see the transcripts of Eastman's testimony in California, which can't be a good thing for Eastman. He's already been identified as an unindicted co-conspirator in Trump's federal indictment regarding his attempt to overturn the election results. Perhaps Eastman could soon be named or indicted himself. And John Eastman isn't the only Trump lawyer who's currently under scrutiny. I feel like I can't even go through all of them within the scope of this one video, but just to name some names, Rudy Giuliani, Sidney Powell, Alina Habba, and more are facing professional scrutiny and in some cases criminal charges. Trump's former lawyer and fixer Michael Cohen has already served time for his role in the hush money payment made to Stormy Daniels. Cohen is now set to testify against his former boss in the upcoming New York trial regarding the same incident. What's the most interesting about all of this is the unwillingness to admit defeat or to admit to intentional wrongdoing, even when directly confronted with evidence proving they were acting with malintent. So you have to wonder why these people are willing to risk their entire careers, their entire reputations, and possibly their freedom just out of fealty to a guy like Trump. What are they getting in return for any of it? We know that Trump only rewards that kind of loyalty if he's in the mood, if he feels like it. So they can't reasonably be doing it because they expect something in return from him, can they? We've known for a couple of years now that John Eastman sought a presidential pardon from Trump regarding his role in the January 6th insurrection and his election tampering. He obviously never got that pardon because their coup failed, and Trump was never able to grant that presidential pardon, even if he wanted to. Maybe they're playing the long game. Maybe they really believe that eventually their efforts to subvert democracy and once again make this great nation a better place for rich white men and no one else will eventually pay off. They're putting in the work for the future generations. It's very benevolent of them. But we just saw that Carrie Lake conceded in her defamation case regarding her repeated claims of election fraud in Arizona. She basically admitted that she lied about the whole thing, and more importantly, she admitted that she did so knowingly and intentionally. She did so knowingly, in fact, that she couldn't even bother to attempt to defend herself in court. She did not have a case to even present. My guess is that she'll say she only conceded so she could get back to focusing on the things that really matter to the people of Arizona. She's got to get back on her senatorial campaign trail because that is her focus right now. For the people of Arizona. Not for herself, not for her own political aspirations, not because she really needs the money or she really needs a job, not because she desperately craves the attention. She's doing it for them. Or maybe it's all much simpler. Maybe they're all being blackmailed. All right. That's it for me. If you got anything out of this, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and check out my podcast, Modern Context. Thanks.